Well, so I've gotten a few comments from you guys asking me kind of an update on the old trash hauler here, and just haven't had the time to make a video. I meant to do kind of an update 1,000 miles into my ownership of this thing, but I just haven't gotten around to it, and I just kept honestly forgetting to put one together for you guys. So under my ownership, I've put about 5,000 miles on this thing. All that I've done to it so far is, right when I got it, I had the transmission serviced and hooked up to a computer, and the transmission has a fantastic bill of health. We'll get into some of the weak points of this van in a minute. Transmission's actually, unfortunately, one of them, but other than the transmission, I changed out the tie rod ends. Or actually, no, they were sway bar links, I think. I can't remember offhand, but I replaced both of those on the van. And then I replaced the struts as well, and then gave it new tires. I paid $1,400 for this van. It's got 141,000 miles on it now, I believe. $1,400 was definitely a great deal. I think I'm just sitting under the 2,000 mark as far as, how much I paid for the van and, 600 some odd dollars that I've put into it. Unfortunately, these vans are not the best vans that you can buy. Now, my reasoning behind spending, as much money as I did on one of these, which honestly wasn't all that much, comparatively speaking, was because when I go back and I look at all the vehicles I've owned, that Ranger, the white one that I had, that was the longest I've ever owned a used vehicle. I had that thing just over 2 years. I meant to do a video on that too, kind of a farewell video, but unfortunately I never got around to doing that either. My reasoning behind buying one of these was the price was right, the miles are still fairly low, and if this thing had any problems with the transmission, basically since it was new until this point, it's likely already had them. Now, I couldn't tell, and the transmission shop couldn't tell right off the bat if the transmission had been replaced before, rebuilt, or anything like that, but they did tell me that the fluid that they changed out of it was very clean. Now, these transmissions are actually decent transmissions, other than the main problem that they can have is the input shaft that goes into the torque converter can shear and break. It's not, anything like catastrophic wise. It doesn't shoot any parts through the transmission case, but it basically prevents the transmission from keeping the pressure because, that input shaft drives the torque converter, which is how you get pressure in an automatic transmission. And without pressure, the transmission is not going to work, and the van or any other automatic transmission equipped vehicle is not going to move. That being said, that's not surprisingly a very expensive repair, and I'm on the fence as to whether or not, if that thing ever does take a shit and break under my ownership, if I'm going to have it fixed or not. My local transmission shop can do that repair for me for, I think they quoted me just under $500 for it, which honestly is not a bad deal. But that being said, I bought this van specifically to use for trash hauling and for hauling lawnmowers. Really any other large item that can fit inside of it. In fact, I've got a lawnmower in it right now that's completely serviced and it's waiting for a new owner. I did throw the seats back into the van. I had pulled them out pretty much the day that I got it to the house and put all the seats in the garage, but I needed that space in the garage for something else, so back into the van they went. And as you guys can see, this one's not even bolted to the floor. It's just sitting in here kind of haphazardly. The seats are very easy to remove. They're definitely heavy, they're definitely bulky. Just me by myself, I can remove and install them and not really have too much of an issue with it. But using this thing for trash hauling has just been outstanding. My only issues so far with using it as a trash hauler is the fact that it's got carpet in it. I have thought about pulling all the carpet out, and I know you can get the vinyl floor kits for these, but that's just more money to spend on it. And I think that, once the time comes that the carpet in this is significantly worn, I might just do that at that point. The bad part about the carpet is I have, allergy issues with dust and weeds, and that stuff likes to basically conglomerate in carpet. Kind of unfortunate, but you know, other than having to vacuum it every now and again, it's not really that big of a deal. It's just kind of an annoyance. So it is something that I try to stay on top of, and that way it doesn't really give me too many issues. Now, this van's definitely got a significant amount of power for a minivan of this year. I think the 3.8 liter Caravans had a little bit more. But this one has 200 horsepower and about 240 foot-pounds of torque. So overall, the power is definitely more than adequate. I've not had any power issues. I've never had any issue passing somebody on the highway. It's performed pretty much just fine for me in, you know, every capacity that I've needed to use it for. Now, this being said, the amount of practicality that you get with a minivan or even a cargo van, which I was looking at those for quite a while before I decided on buying a regular minivan. The only reason I didn't buy a cargo van was I would have had to pay significantly more money for a proper, you know, Chevy Express or Ford Econoline. I just didn't know if this would necessarily be the best fit for me at the time. So I decided to spend a little bit of money instead of a lot more money to essentially get my feet wet. And you know, I could have definitely gone with a cargo van over this one. That's another thought too, that if this one ever, you know, takes a shit and it's bad, that's probably what I'm going to end up doing, is just spending some money on a nicer actual cargo van with a, you know, better built frame that can tow. I have thought about putting a towing package on this thing, but I ended up requiring my dad's Ranger, which is a 99. And that's already got a tow package on it. And so I just haven't had a whole hell of a lot of need to install a tow package on this thing. So I do have the seats in it, as you guys saw. And it is nice to be able to haul people around in it, you know, friends and whatnot. And it's definitely convenient. One other thing that I like about it is it's got rear HVAC controls. It also has rear radio controls, but that's kind of useless because I forgot to mention I actually did install another stereo deck into this thing. But this van is definitely pretty nicely equipped for what it is. Another selling point for me was the fact that the AC works in it very well. The AC in this thing, it definitely blows cold. And here in California, especially right now when it's starting to get into the high 80s, in fact, it's supposed to get into the hundreds this week, in the 90s, and it's definitely a great thing to have in this climate. As far as any issues that I've had with it, legitimate issues, really isn't anything major. My ABS light and brake light come on, you know, in tandem occasionally, and I have not bothered to figure out why that's happening. I don't know if it's just a sensor or a connection or even the ABS controller, I have no idea, but it seems to stop just fine, and the ABS works. It's just those lights come on for some reason. So I don't really know what's going on with that, but anyways, I also went ahead and replaced this. This is a very common part, and I know that to replace because here, when I went to the junkyard and found this part, this was the best one I could find. And our sun and all the UV light that, you know, we get during the summertime just cooks plastic, makes it brittle, makes it crack, and that's what happened with the old cowling here. Was it basically just fell apart, and when I had removed it to do the spark plugs and the wires, it basically just crumbled. In fact, on that other side, about this far in, that whole part right here completely broke off. So I decided to change that out. That was like 15 bucks because I got it when they had a sale going on. But other than that, I'm about to do an oil change on it. I've not noticed it burning any oil. I've been checking it fairly regularly. And the motor's actually been pretty decent. Haven't had any issues with it. These 3.8s, when they were in their first generation, they were not really the best made motors. They had a lot of problems with the intake manifold gaskets. They had a lot of head gasket issues. And I forget what year it was that Ford finally fixed that. I think it was 99 when they updated the motor. But these motors don't have any issues that I know of with any sort of head gasket leaks or malfunctions. So this is one of those motors that Ford made. Same with the 4.2 liter, the early versions of that, where they had issues with the head gaskets going out. So I'm still on the fence on whether or not, if this thing actually does take a nosedive, if I'm just going to replace it, or if I'm just going to go ahead and fix it or part it out, or I don't know yet. I guess that's one of those things that when I have to cross that bridge, I'll decide how I'm going to go through with that. So I'm going to go ahead and do an oil change on it. Got a Motorcraft filter and some Castrol GTX. I've got an extra quart over there in the pan that I don't know if I'm going to have to use that or not, but I bought the extra quart anyways just in case I ever have to top it off or not. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out of the way and then probably clip back in. There's 60. So I've got it out of the shop now. So I have it pretty well topped off. Just underneath the dot. It's good enough for me. So I'm hoping this van gives me a little bit more use out of it. I have no doubt in my mind that it will, but I've been surprised before.